Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
More details are emerging about the practical implications of schedule policy career. New guidance from the Office of Personnel Management comes as agencies face a looming deadline to formally reclassify thousands of career federal employees. In effect, those reclassifications will strip workers of long-standing civil service protections. Here with the latest is Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for being here.
Nice to be with you, Terry.
I know you are following this story closely. Before we jump into the latest, give us a quick background on where agencies and employees stand right now regarding schedule policy career.
Well, after we saw the executive order last week from President Trump, which made official about 8,000 reclassifications of career federal employees, now we're seeing a lot of that come down to the practical nuts and bolts of, how is this going to change things for those thousands of employees across government? Of course, as we know, the Trump administration has been working to put together schedule policy career and this new classification of federal employment. Really, since the president's first day in office, we've seen a lot of steps through the regulatory process, through different executive orders on this. But now things are becoming very real for employees who are going to see these reclassifications.
And OPM has published implementation guidance. What are the headlines there?
That's right. So we see a lot more details now from OPM on what this is going to look like for the employees who do get moved into schedule policy career. Even though the executive order did make those reclassifications official, there's still some kind of paperwork and processing type work that agencies are going to have to do. First, to inform federal employees of their reclassifications, update their workforce and personnel files, and make sure that everything is set, that this is actually going to be fully implemented. So that guidance from OPM that we just saw come out this week goes into a lot more detail about adverse action proceedings, how this is going to affect federal hiring, how this is going to affect whistleblower protections, prohibited personnel practices, performance and awards and bonuses, and just a lot of varying things that are going to change for these employees here.
Drew, it sounds like there's going to be a little bit of a break-in period as this gets up and rolling, but you just articulated a number of key changes. Let's take the disciplinary policies and protections first. What are the big changes that these folks who have been reclassified will see?
That's right. And I do think that is a good place to start, just because that's the one that seems to be grabbing the most headlines and the most attention here is you're losing your civil service protections that make you an at-will employee and make you easier to fire for most reasons within, of course, legal bounds, as the Trump administration has said. But if you look at the actual implementation side of things here, discipline procedures are now going to be what OPM says are one-step actions. So there's no need for giving advance notice to personnel if you're going to fire them. There's no need to put an employee on a performance improvement plan. You can really just fire employee at will if you believe that they're not carrying out the president's policy or priority areas. OPM said at the same time, managers still have to be fair, follow the law, follow policy. And a lot of those decisions could be based, if employees do end up getting fired from this category of employment, the way OPM has worded it in some of its documents is that these decisions could be based on performance, conduct, or mission-related reasons. So a very broad category here of things that could potentially mean the end of employment for schedule policy career workers.
You also talked about prohibited personnel practices and other sorts of workplace and personnel policies. What are you reading in the implementation guidance about those?
There's a lot of things that both will change and won't change when it comes to just kind of broader personnel policies. So, for example, employees' pay and benefits won't really change. Their collective bargaining status won't automatically change, but there still could be some room for that to change if agencies make some sort of decision or petition in that sense. But in areas that employees will see things change is they will no longer be eligible, for example, for retention, recruitment, or relocation incentives. They won't have access to student loan repayment options. They won't be eligible for the presidential rank awards. They'll have to have a separate category of performance bonuses and awards, and just a lot of different policy changes there. And then for when it comes to prohibited personnel practices, the Trump administration says those still apply, as do whistleblower disclosures. So according to OPM's guidance, these employees can still make whistleblower disclosures to the Office of Special Counsel. But if they believe that there's been some sort of prohibited personnel action against them by the agency, they will have to go through their own agency's internal general counsel office for any concerns there. They won't be able to take those to the OSC or any other independent agency from here on out. So there's going to be a lot of process changes for these employees here as well.
Drew, we're talking about changes for folks who are already in these positions, but OPM's offered some guidance about what to do when hiring for these positions now as well.
That's right. So we're not seeing this just, of course, for the employees who have been converted, but if agencies are hiring, then we're going to see those changes in the recruitment process too. So the way that that is going to work, according to OPM's guidance here, is that on USA Jobs, it's going to be apparent or clear that the position is an at-will position. It will be covered by schedule policy career, and new hires will have to sign paperwork confirming that they understand that their position is at will and that they can be fired at any time and for most any reason. There's also confirmation that employees or new hires would have to make that they understand that they won't have access to the Merit Systems Protection Board to appeal adverse actions if there's issues with their performance or any sort of disciplinary matter there. So there's a lot of changes on the front end as well. And I think we're going to see a lot more kind of paperwork come out of this. But just more broadly speaking, I think these employees who are the current ones are going to see these changes pretty immediately as well.
Drew, we're only about a week out from the signing of the executive order. Are people still waiting to find out if they've actually been reclassified?
Some seem to still be waiting. Some may have already been informed, but agencies were given a 7-day deadline from the signing of the executive order, which is actually today, Wednesday, for agencies to inform all employees who have been reclassified. So I'd imagine that employees who don't already know if they have been converted to schedule policy career will find out sometime today. And from there, they might get more information from their agencies on what exactly that's going to look like in their personnel policies and their files there.
That's Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for bringing us this latest news.
Thank you, Terry.
You can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com.
Sean O'Keefe, former Navy Secretary, NASA Administrator, and senior leader across multiple presidential administrations, reflects on the principles that shaped his long federal career. In this episode of Lessons in Leadership, he joined Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA, to discuss motivating teams through uncertainty, leading across agencies, and staying rooted in mission during times of public scrutiny and change.
Hello, and welcome to the Lessons in Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Sean O'Keefe, former NASA Administrator, former Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget, former Secretary of the Navy, former Comptroller and CFO of the Defense Department, and Professor Emeritus at Syracuse University's Maxwell School of Public Affairs. Welcome, and thank you for joining.
Well, thank you, Shane. Delight to be with you. Appreciate it very much.
What first drew you into public service, and when was it evident to you that leadership was an important part of the roles you played?
Well, I grew up around the public service. My dad was a career naval officer. He was a submariner, and we lived all over the place throughout the country. And as a result, I got an up-close and personal understanding through him, as well as through all the folks he associated with and the environments he was working in, just what the extraordinary value is of public service and what is it that would motivate people to want to be engaged in it and to be really involving themselves in what is something larger than themselves. And the only place that is really formulated properly is within the public sector and the public service. that again is the beneficiary are the beneficiaries are the citizens of the nation, the community, and the region in which you live.
Did you think about leadership early on, saying I need to be a great leader, and therefore I'm going to learn how to do it, or did you just naturally evolve into it? Any thoughts on that?
I guess it evolved by the great good fortune of being witness to several really extraordinary leaders, people who really did take the initiative to engage others in the task, to pull together and motivate folks to really contribute their very best to achieve an outcome. And I saw the value of that on multiple occasions and found that was the primary ingredient, the trait, the characteristic that needed to be exhibited is the fundamentals of leadership in moving everyone engaged towards a common objective.
You have served under several presidents. Can you talk a little bit about that? What were there challenges to overcome, or were you away from politics so you didn't get? Talk about that a little bit. How does it differ as you serve through a transition, or does leadership stay the same?
Oh no, it's it's really critically important in transition cases, to be sure. But the two presidents that I served in their administrations were President George H.W. Bush and President George W. Bush in two different eras, obviously. But as a consequence, that was the closest I came to understanding the nature of the individuals who were in that ultimate leadership capacity, and their capability to motivate. Both of them were just extraordinarily inspiring people who motivated everybody to be part of the solution. But most importantly, they also had a capacity of really designating what needed to be done. And you knew that they were perfectly prepared to do it themselves. And that made the task that much more achievable. There were several different circumstances in understanding what the objectives of the senior leadership are all about.
You've worked for different kinds of organizations, political administrations, and then government departments, agencies, and then private sector, and now academia. How does that affect your leadership style? Or do you find that leadership, the core tenets of leadership, are applicable no matter what the organization you find yourself in and having to lead? It doesn't matter where you are, that the core leadership characteristics are the same? Are they different? Are you adapting?
Well, there's a common myth in my judgment, and I'm probably the minority view of this in the academic field of public management. That common myth is that you can't apply the same principles in the public sector that you do in the private sector.
Yeah.
I never found that to be an impediment.
Okay.
It was always a circumstance where, strategy, the focus on the talent, people engaged, the process to going through decision making, the integrity imperative that must be there in order to demonstrate the absolute conviction of what's intended here, as well as the moral standing of what it is you're attempting to achieve. All those factors are very much the same. It's going to have its nuances, and there are very distinctive, differentiators within those organizations and those sectors. But at the same time, those basic principles, those tenets, foundations of what make up organizations and organization theory, in so many ways are fundamentally the same. And how you employ those may be slightly nuanced to match the condition, but they all are imperative in the same direction.
A little bit of a different direction. You were part of the very first cohort of what is now Presidential Management Intern Program, later became the Presidential Management Fellows Program. What did that early experience teach you about leading within government?
The Presidential Management Intern Program, as it started, was designed for just that purpose, a focus on public management, a focus on implementation. And its evolution over time has been extraordinary. It mystifies me why that has been the subject now of an executive order that has dismantled it. And it's absolutely unconscionable given the nature of the hundreds, thousands of people who've moved through that program in the course of the last nearly 50 years that have gone on in some cases to be senior executives within the federal government, and in other cases they've moved on to other kinds of pursuits. But even with that, even for those who have left the service, they walked away with an appreciation of what public service is all about, why it matters, and why this is so critical to get it right. Because by and large, the reason why these functions are delegated to the public sector is because no one else can do it. Usually that's the case. It takes that kind of focus of a public entity in order to achieve an outcome that frankly would not be achieved in other spheres. So as a result of that, it gave me an incredibly in-depth understanding of that process at a very early stage in my career that has lasted the entirety of that professional experience.
A closing question: who has influenced your leadership style, and what about their example stays with you? And that question can be cast broadly. So, inside government, outside government, perhaps not government at all, somebody that you've met, reported to, been mentored by, a broad net. But when you think about broadly, when you think about who has influenced you, who comes to mind?
I would have to say that the number one, hands down, greatest influence during the course of my life was my dad. He was an engineer, so everything was a calculated risk. I think I was probably 25 before I realized the answer was not to be found for everything in a slide rule, but that was his bent and his mindset. And he taught me how to think critically. And it really was one of the most extraordinary attributes. And he was an inspiring parent and mentor in so many ways. And all the different things I've done throughout the course of his life, I had the opportunity through much of it to be able to consult with him on a variety of things, and always walked away with a more informed perspective. Dad was an extraordinary public servant in his own right.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for sharing your insights and experiences. It has been a pleasure talking.
I'm delighted to be with you, Shane. Thank you so much for doing this.
And this is Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA, reminding you to empower your team and embrace challenges. Until the next time on Lessons in Leadership.
Find the full podcast and future episodes of Lessons in Leadership on the Federal News Network app and anywhere you enjoy your podcasts.